Daisy is an energy healer and psychic medium who has experienced angelic messages and visions since the age of 6. A fifth generation healer born from maternal healing lineage, Daisy is a psychic medium who works with the energetic body to help remove blockages and imbalances within the body. Channeling guidance from the angels, she is also a certified Reiki master, certified angel guide, certified crystal practitioner, and empath. Daisy is also the founder and owner of Earth Angel Crystal, a new crystal energy healing center and crystal shop in the heart of Long Island City in the borough of Queens in New York City. And today, we're talking to Daisy. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Daisy, I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Hi, my love. I'm so excited to be here. This is so fun.
Yeah, and it's funny how we met. I mean, I met you maybe it's a month now ago. So we're gonna talk about your store, but I met Daisy, for those listening, at her new store, Earth Angel Crystal, here in Long Island City, in New York City, right on the East River, across from the Empire State Building, United Nations, in the heart of New York City. And it was just such a joy to meet her. We instantly clicked, and so I really wanted to have Daisy on the podcast. So Daisy, tell us, I mean, I kind of gave it away, but tell us where you're based and what do you do?
Hi. Well, first, I just want to say that yes, as soon as I met you, I just felt like an instant connection. So thank you for having me on your podcast. Usually, as you know, it's the opposite. I also do podcasts, so it's fun to be on the other ends of this. So this is great. But yeah, I actually was originally located. I'm born and raised in Manhattan, first of all. So born and raised in Manhattan. My whole life lived in Manhattan. And a few years ago, say 8, 9, 10 years ago, I moved to Long Island. And in Long Island is where I started my practice. But during the pandemic is when I had like an awakening. And then I was informed by my guides to move to Long Island City. So me being now in Long Island City is actually divine guidance that came through. So right now I am located right on 50th Street. The address is 548 50th Avenue, right here in Long Island City. And I'm literally right across the street from the original space that I opened my shop doors in. So that in and of itself, it's like a whole conversation. But yeah, I actually opened up my shop a year ago in another location. And we were able to help so many people and grow. And now we're at our new location. So this is all amazing. Yeah.
And folks like you and I know how hard it is to find real estate in New York City. So that's a huge achievement. And it's interesting because I didn't know that you lived in Long Island for a bit. And um, just very quickly, I feel like Long Island psychics and intuitives tend to kind of congregate in Long Island. And Long Island is known for having a lot of psychic workers. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like why that is? Why do we all tend to go there?
I honestly think that for in my case, I know it was a calling. It was part of the journey for me because that was actually where I needed to rediscover or reawaken the gifts and abilities that I now understand in a much deeper sense. And so I believe that I needed to go to Long Island specifically. It's because it's very isolated there. It's very nature orientated. There's really not that much commotion. There's time to sit and think and be reflective. And I truly believe that I needed that in order for me to really tap into that inner voice, that inner guidance to lead me to where I am today.
That makes so much sense because I personally love going into Long Island sometimes for day trips because I find it like an escape from bustling New York City. So you're a psychic medium, a Reiki master, angel guide, crystal practitioner. Um, and I would just love to hear, how did your journey start? How did you delve into all of this?
That's it's really interesting you asked because this was just very natural for me since I was a child. My household was just very spiritual to begin with. My mom is was born an energy healer, an empath, a medium, a psychic. And my whole life, my whole existence, I've just known her to be with her tarot cards, her Spanish tarot cards. So she does different readings. But I grew up in botanicas. I grew up as a little girl. I don't know if everyone knows what a botanica is, but it's fairly like a deep cut Spanish Spanish metaphysical space where people would get readings and healing sessions done. And there would just be these really old school images of saints everywhere. And so I grew up in that environment. My household was very open to speaking about angels and guides, or espíritu, like my mom would say, like the spirits. And so I would say my upbringing with everything that I'm doing now has to do with just me being so sensitive and finely tuned to it from an early age.
Got it. And you've shared with me, and you see on your website that this is a you just shared how you grew up with this ambiance in your family. There was a lot of openness to this kind of work and a lot of natural born empaths and psychics. You mentioned that you come from a maternal healing lineage, and I first of all I love that phrase. That's a beautiful phrase. So can you share what was it like growing up with? I'm assuming it would be your mother, your grandmother, women in your family who
All of
were
them.
open about these abilities.
Yeah, it was really interesting because the conversations we would have again at that age, and I'm talking 4, 5, 6 years old, you don't really understand what's happening, but the conversations we were have was just always somehow about spirit. It was always about, oh, did you see that spirit walking by, or did you just see that image that was there, or did you hear that noise? Or in some cases, there were experiences where I actually see things moving from one end of the room to the other. And my first experience was with that was with a pencil, where a pencil from the kitchen landed and moved to the hallway of my apartment at the time. And I was probably like 8 or 9 when that happens. So I would say the conversations with all the ladies or the women were just very loving. It was just very open to spirits. It was never anything scary. Of course, I would say the old school generational healers, at least in my family, they do believe or that in like the negative energies and the negative spirits or entities. I've learned now that I don't look at it as negative. I look at it as confused spirits. And so the confused spirits can actually do things where people might think places are haunted or things are bad or it's bad energy. But really it's just that they're trying to get at your attention because they need help and healing and love. But that's like a whole nother conversation. Um, but yeah, I would say that just all the women in the family being so open and able to sense, see, feel spirit was definitely something that allowed me to gain that extra sensitivity to be able to do that now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And just for a brief moment, when you said call them confused spirits, I got goosebumps 'cause I've never heard it described that way before. That really resonates with me. So thanks for sharing that. And with your was your father's side of the family not quite as spiritually open to things like this, or what was
Not
it?
at all. It's so funny you say that because I am the youngest of two siblings. I have two older brothers, and they are not spiritual at all. I mean, they know of my mom and myself, of course, and like the spirituality, but I think they're a little spooked. They just created this like, oh, okay, that's your thing. But yet, whenever they need help and guidance, we're the ones they call. So it's just so funny that it works that way. But I do want to add that it's not only my mother's direct female lineage, but my mother's father's mother actually continues to speak to me in spirit and she teaches me in spirit. And so I learned of her by her visitation through me, if that makes sense. So, yeah, so it is, I believe I definitely know it's my mom's bloodline, but it's both female and male, but mainly female, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting because in my family, um, well, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this once I share this next thing, but I believe that we all have we've talked about this too. I believe we all have psychic ability and the ability to connect with our loved ones in a very close way. Um, that being said, I think some people have a propensity for even stronger gifts and they are naturally born with those, just like singers. Some people sing very differently, and some people can sing super high octaves like Mariah Carey. Some people just can't, but maybe they're both singers. They're just different singers. So, anyways, in my family, my father's side of the family seems to have all of the intuitives, but in the males, it's really interesting. And
And
I
that's
just find it
rare.
very.
I don't know if you know that. That's very rare.
I've
Usually it
heard.
does stem from the female line. And the fact that and even as I'm saying this, like I'm getting the chills and the goosebumps, the fact that it's in your male line just means that in their past life, they were just, they were medicine men, if you will. They were medicine men. They were deep healers, and that was so strong. And their mission was to continue that bloodline, and that's how and why. Even you might feel that in the male energy, the male lineage of your family, if that makes sense. It just means that they were so strong at what they did that it was almost like an intention to come back and repeat the healing with the males.
You know, as does happen in our work, even though I can't prove that factually right now, I feel that so much as you say it because, well, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, he was part indigenous Peruvian, so I bet there's a lot of history there, a lot of ancestral work in that respect, healing work. And then my paternal grandmother, her family was from China, southeastern China, so who
Oh yeah.
knows? Who knows? But I would love
And
to.
as I was saying that, I was actually receiving, and I actually saw the very indigenous culture. So I can see like the indigenous rituals and the connecting to the earth. There was a lot of medicinal plant, herbs, earth. It was hugging the trees and ceremonies around trees. So it was a lot of that in your in your family history, like lineage, you know.
You're on point because you are not the first intuitive to tell me that. So it's that's really special to hear. I would love to hear what is the pencil story is fascinating. Are there any other memories you have from being a child and having visions or experiences that really stick out to you?
Yeah, I have a lot, and some might think it's spooky. I actually don't because I now know that it was a gentle, loving warning. But I can give you many. So the pencil situation. When I was born and raised in the projects in Manhattan, and so I was in one building, and my mom and family and I we moved to another building, and as we moved to another building. Um, there was something energetically that I felt about the apartment. So I have always been an empath. Even as a little girl, I didn't know what the word meant or really what my gifts and abilities were, but I knew that something happened in that apartment. Um, so it wasn't until we were there for about a year that every time I would pass by the hallway in the apartment, I would feel an energy, I would feel a vibration, or I would hear things, or I would just feel it wasn't negative and bad, but it was something unsettled. And so it wasn't until about a year that we were there that one day my mom and I were the only ones in the apartment, and we received a knock on the door. And then we opened the door, and it was a woman that looked a little fearful. And she asked that if she can come into the apartment because this was her childhood apartment and she wanted to visit it after 30 years or so. My mom welcomed her in and we went to the living room. And the woman, after a few hours, she was there for a while. She then came out and said that her mother was murdered in the apartment. And actually, her remains were left by the hallway.
Wow.
And and I'm getting chills as I say this, but there was a closet in where the hallway was, and so that's where everything took place around that area. And so the pencil was just one of many things that happened. Like there would just be balls moving or anything that was there. There was always a spirit trying to get our attention. So when my mom learned of this, she obviously did like a house clearing, and then the spirit was released, and then that was fine. And then after that, it was a very peaceful, nothing like that ever happens again to that extent. But spirit would definitely try to catch our attention. That was like one story. Another story, I would say, when I was a little girl, I'm very clairvoyant, but spirit would communicate with me via dream state, and so they would tell me things that were to happen in the future, and I would dream of people that I was to meet. I would know things about them that there was no way I would have known. They would tell me things about their life. If someone would touch me, like suddenly I was getting flashes of like their whole entire life. Um, so things like that always happens to me since a child. But one prominent thing I would say that really stood out, and I think was like the starting point in my journey. One day I had a dream. I think I was in my early 20s. I was my early 20s, I think. And I had a dream that I was in a vehicle, and this vehicle, I was going to be driving, and all of a sudden I see a crack on the windshield, like this crack, and I see a commotion happening in this vehicle. And I remember waking up and just having the sweats and the whole thing. And I just had a feeling that my guides and helpers were telling me something. Fast forward a few weeks, I was going to Atlantic City with my family to celebrate a family birthday. And it was my turn to drive. I was a new driver then, because growing up in the city, you don't need a car, you don't need to drive. But I had my license, and for some reason, no one wanted to drive, and they wanted me to drive. I was supposed to be the driver. And so something told me, which I know now my guides and angels, do not get behind the wheel of that car. You're not going to drive today. And so there was even a little bit of commotion as to how come you're not driving? We're all tired and you have to drive the car. And I was like, I cannot drive the car. It was just something that was telling me not to do it. And so someone else decided to drive the car. And I would say about 20, 30 minutes into the drive, there was I don't know if they called it a 14-wheeler or 16-wheeler truck. There was a tire explosion, and the back of the tire of this huge truck popped off, landed on the windshield of our car, and the same exact crack and the same exact commotion that happened in my dream state happened. And the person driving was a professional driver and was able to maneuver the car so that none of us got hurt. I truly believe that if I were the one behind the wheel, I don't know what that outcome would have been.
That's
So that's
incredible.
just, yeah, so that's just one of like many stories of things that people might hear and they might think, oh my gosh, that's scary, but it wasn't scary. I mean, yes, when I woke up from the dream, I was like, okay, I felt like a deep sensation not to do X, Y, and Z, but it was never something that spooked me or freaked me out. Not the pencil, not the spirit that that had ended with the situation that happened to her before her time. That stuff never spooked me as a kid.
That's incredible. And first I want to say, when it comes to being like, I like being spooked. I like scary movies, but I also know that that is fiction and it's also a cultural construct. In our in a lot of cultures, specifically our culture, there's a lot of organized religion that teaches us, conditions us to believe that we don't have the power to connect spiritually this way. So then it seems forbidden. It feels like a forbidden thing to do, so therefore it is scary, or it's beyond what we think we can do, so it is scary. So I think those experiences you shared may sound spooky to some. It sounds a little, even to me. There's an inner child in me that's like, "Ooh, that's so spooky," but they're very powerful experiences, and they led you on a path to where you are today. And I'm curious to hear your input regarding the story of your apartment. Some people distinguish between something called, they like to call residual energy, where they're like energy imprints we leave behind, not intelligent soul energy, but those imprints, versus intelligent energy, things that move objects, like a soul visits and move objects or appears in full body, quote unquote, full body form. So for you, how do you see those two things? Do you believe they're different? They're the same? There's no distinction? And I'm curious if with that hallway, do you feel like that was a soul that was present in the hallway, or the imprint of the soul, so to speak?
Yeah, I think these are great questions. So I believe that spirit will communicate with the person that they know they can communicate with in a way that resonates with them, where they will be able to read, understand, feel, and sense what the spirit is trying to communicate. So there are those spirits that like to move objects because they know the person that they're blending with is they're able to blend with them in such a way that the person is going to see and feel and sense that object moving. Then there's the spirits that are still trying to learn how to work with the recipients, and so they might leave certain impressions on them, or thoughts might come in, or feelings might occur because they're trying to get their intention. So in the case of the hallway, I just think that because, and even as I'm saying this, that there's like glistening, glittering in front of me. Thank you, guardian angels. So I believe what happened was that because both my mom and I are very empathic and very open and very sensitive, it was very easy for them to do those movements with objects. And so they were able to do that in such a way and manipulate the energy, if you will, because that's something that they knew we would understand, that there was something unsettled there. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I believe that spirit will work with and blends with who they're trying to communicate with in such a way so that you can pick up on that energy vibration or that frequency that they're trying to convey. I feel, when I was talking earlier about confused spirits, I do believe that there is something, when I like to say lower vibrational energies, because that is real. Energy is real. Energy is positive, and energy can be lower vibrational. And what that means is, if people are in a space and they just had an argument, or if there was like a disruption where someone, let's say, took their life, or someone's life was taken ahead of time, there is an energetic imprint that is left behind. And so for most people, they're actually sensing and feeling this energy, but because they're not that sensitive or tuned to it, it's easy for the ego to dismiss it as like maybe an unawareness of something happening there, or they just start feeling yicky and they don't know why. And that's just only because they haven't fine-tuned that sensitivity to that soul, that inner solar plexus work, which is how we communicate with spirit. But I do believe that spirit does leave energies behind, and buildings and rooms and even people leave energies behind. And it's really up to the individual, whether in spirit or in person, to reflect what kind of energy they're giving off, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. And it makes me wonder, what are your thoughts on, because you mentioned that spirit can leave imprints in spaces and rooms and buildings. Do you believe the same of like objects, like a book or a doll, or because I
Yeah,
do believe
so
that.
I am actually, and I didn't know this. I just recently learned this a few years ago, that I actually have a really strong ability with psychometry, which is the sensations of, I can be able to touch an object or see an object and know things about the owner of the object, or where it came from, or who owns the object. And so I do believe that imprints are left on objects because objects are also energy. So remember, energy is, if I look at a bottle, like for example, I have my Karma Cleaner spray here. This is composed of energy. So where our ego minds is looking at this and saying, oh, it's a bottle, it's plastic, but how this is actually formed is through energy and light and vibration. And this is how we're able to have the bottle. So I know that that might be a concept that maybe a lot of people are not familiar with or even open to. But in the work that I do, I understand this. And so when I look at people or situations or healing sessions, it's always coming from a perspective of energy. I can feel energetic imbalances. My guides are with me to tell me where the energetic imbalances are, and then they work with me to help that individual, or help the object, or help the space. So I also do house clearings and energy clearings. I don't advertise that on my website, because I do it by case basis, only because if I have people coming in and they're mentally not well, obviously I'm not going into that person's home. So that's why it's more of, I would have to kind of get to know the person first and see where they are, and whether or not they're going to do the upkeep after the spiritual healing, because there's stuff people have to do, which is like the prayer, the lighting candles, the intention. So if they're going to keep up with the homework to maintain that high vibration, then that's someone who I would consider working with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like there has been a case, whether it's house cleansing or even for outside of your work, just as someone who maybe visits someone's home as a guest, where you felt like you've had to set a boundary, like, you know
Oh yeah.
what, I don't want to step in there, or you know what, I don't want to work in that house.
Yeah, so it's funny because ever since I was a little girl, my mom in Spanish would always tell me, she would say, "Oh, we're gonna go into this store. We're gonna go into this place." And as soon as she would open the door and step foot, it was always places where I literally could not go in. There was like an energy field, an energetic barrier where I just like, even if I took a step in, I would have to come right back out. And at that early age, of the age of like 6, 7, 8, I didn't know what that was. And so my mom used to say in Spanish, like, what's wrong with you? Like, people are waiting for you. Like, these people want to say hi. I told them I have a daughter, like they want to meet you. And I would just say, Mom, I can't go in there. And so I would actually be waiting outside of the store or the apartment, waiting for my mom to finish. And sometimes she would be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. I would be the one waiting outside. And I just believe, and now I know in those specific cases, let's say in this case with the store, the business owner actually didn't do good things in the store, in that space. And I learned this years later. But that was actually the energy that I was picking up on. But because I didn't know how to explain it or even knew what it was at that early age, my mom used to yell at me and she used to say, people are going to think that, like I'm telling you not to come in. And I would just say, I just can't go in there. And now we talk about it and we laugh. And she's like, oh my God, Daisy, like I had no idea this is what was happening to you at such a young age. Does that make
Wow,
sense?
yeah, it makes me think you just triggered a memory for me. Um, and I need to explore this 'cause I never knew what it meant. But ever since I was a very, very small kid, my doggy is joining for the chat. Ever since I was a really, really small kid, um, this is very, I've never said this to anybody. This is the first time I say it out loud outside of my head. When I've entered, and this still happens, when I enter gas stations and convenience stores, specifically,
Oh
my
yeah.
root chakra, it's like like when you have butterflies in your stomach, it's like butterflies in my root chakra. And I have no idea what that means. I don't know if there's something about the crowdedness of gas stations and convenience stores, or maybe it's the petroleum, or I don't know what it is. But so I don't know. I'm gonna explore that. I'm gonna look more into that.
And that's how it starts. And so that's actually the stuff that I was feeling at that age. It was just almost like an activation in a certain chakra energy center. And it was almost as if it was not gonna align with me. So there was just this sensation of this is not the space for you, or this energy is not the energy you need to be around. And so I literally would feel like almost like a light layer of like a force field. And now I know that it was my guardian angel just literally placing me in a protective field of energy. So for your case, it makes sense because the people that are going to the convenience stores or going to, let's say, those bathrooms in convenience stores, it's not to place judgment, but a lot of things happens during off hours in those spaces, and you're probably picking up those energies and those imprints that are left behind, and that's probably why you're sensing what you're sensing.
And sometimes I've wondered if it's a something protective. Well, it is. We already established that. But when I get those butterflies in the root chakra, which sounds so funny to say out loud, it actually feels good and I feel comfortable. So I wonder if it's like something in me is activating a protective shield as I walk into these spaces. But yeah, that's the first time I've ever told anybody that. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And actually I want to delve into next. You do crystal healing sessions, and like speaking of chakras, and so I don't want to assume that these healing sessions involve chakras. I assume they do, but what does a crystal healing session involve? Like if I'm a client, like what exactly happens or what happens beforehand?
Yeah. So my crystal healing and chakra balancing sessions, they're super super popular because what people are getting is the energy help that they need, and they're getting an energy aura cleanse, and they're also getting the messages from their ancestors, loved ones, guardian angels, guides, helpers, their team of light, if you will, on the other side. So how the session begins is, for someone's first time doing this, especially if this is their first time to energy work in general, but just first time with me, It is a 2 hour process from start to finish. It doesn't necessarily mean 2 hours on the bed or in the healing space, but it's 2 hours because there's the first 5 or 10 minutes goes into the paperwork that just basically says, I'm not a medical doctor. And I like to state this because spirit will tell me things. And sometimes what they tell me are deeper things that maybe a medical doctor might be able to initially. I never diagnosed. I just want to say that. But sometimes they do tell me things like this person has to go to a doctor for X, Y, and Z. So I like to just state I'm not a medical doctor, and whatever information and messages that I'm conveying to you, it's really going to be up to the person's discretion to either seek a second opinion or to actually go get something checked out. But the paperwork basically states that, and it also is a deeper dive into the intention setting of the session. So, something that's really important is for the person who's seeking the energy healing, for them to have an understanding as to why they are there. And so, I like for them to actually put that down on paper because there's certain prompts or questions I ask them, because this gets them into them thinking as to why is it that I'm here and what is it that I want my intention to be. Once the intention is established, I then have them vocally say it out loud because energy, I believe in energy and everything I do is energy. Words are energy and thought is energy. So once I get them thinking about what they need, now we start speaking about what we need. And now guides, angels, and helpers can hear that. And now they know this is what we're here for. This is how I can help. So that's the first part of the beginning of the session. From that point, I have a reading room. So all that takes place in the reading room. And then we move over to the healing room. And in the healing room, I begin by doing an energy aura cleanse. And that can be with incense, sage, with sprays if people are sensitive to incense and sage. And what I do is we start activating the chakras. So the chakras begin to get activated by me giving the person little activations to do. So little exercises. It could be anything from like opening up, like literally opening up and clearing and releasing. But it's really coming from the guides and helpers. So whatever the angel or guide or helper is telling me to do with that specific person is very personal and very specific to that person because it's what they need specifically. So there's going to be a chakra activation based off of what their helpers are telling me. And while that's happening, I'm incensing and saging. And then I'm calling in the angels, guides, and helpers and loved ones on the other side to assist us. So I call in the archangels. I work with archangels. I mainly call in 4, which is Archangel Michael for the protection and grounding and safety. Archangel Gabriel for communication to allow for any and all messages coming through to me for it to be of truth and honesty and integrity. I like to call in Archangel Uriel to help clear out the paths, any obstacles, challenges, any little humps in the road. Archangel Uriel is going to be the one that we call in for, and Archangel Raphael, which is the healing archangel. So I work very closely. I'm a channel for archangels, and I work really closely with them. But sometimes other archangels like to come in, like Archangel Shamuel likes to definitely come in. A lot of them, the Archangel Sandalphon likes to come in, Archangel Raziel. So I have a loving relationship with them, and so we actually call them in. And we also call in the guardian angels and loved ones on the other side. What happens when that happens is the person immediately begins to feel the energy around them shifting. And so a lot of times, because this is their first session with me, a lot of times people do feel a little lightheaded, like almost immediately. And that's just because the energy is raising so much and their vibration is not there yet. They're not used to it. So if they feel a little lightheaded, it's momentarily. I ask the angels to kind of like step back a little bit because it's too much for them. And then at that point, I lay them down on the bed. I place like a little white cloth over their eyes. And then I begin with the energy healing session. What that entails is the archangels blending with me in such a way that we're able to remove the energetic imbalances from the body. And then when that happens, the person, usually I'll say 99.9% of the time will start crying or they will just fall asleep. Those are like the two go-to sensations. Um, and then, or they just get into such a deep state that it's almost like they can hear me, but they can't even move. Like they're just, but it's a gentle loving. It's nothing scary. It's very gentle, very loving. And what they're feeling is just that love, that unconditional love from their loved ones or helpers on the other side. And so this session continues in that way. And so during that time, the guides or helpers are telling me what to tell the person in terms of meditation. So they'll give me a guided meditation so that I'm telling the person what guided meditation to go on. So, for example, Spirit can say to me, tell them about how to open up their heart, their heart chakra, or how to align their chakras. So they'll actually give me like a little script, and then I'm just repeating what I'm hearing or sensing or feeling. It could be an actual location they tell me to send the client to. So that's where the guided meditation comes in. Then once that is complete, again, all this is based off of the guidance from the angels. So once that's complete, the session continues with crystals being placed on the body. And so the crystals at that point are going to raise the energy centers off of each of the chakras. And so the crystals are going to be placed off of where the guides and angels are telling me to place it. So yeah, they could be on the basic chakra points, or they can be in other chakra points because we have more than seven. And then after that is all said and done, we go back to the reading room after the session's over, and that's where I give them a debrief as to any and all messages that came through, who from the other side came through, what they looked like, what were their messages, what they want the person to focus on, et cetera, et cetera. So the session is a long session for the first time, especially, but it's just filled with love, and it's filled with so much healing that like I said, 99.9% of the people cry, but it's because it's a good cry. It's a release. It's an affirmation. It's a confirmation. It's a validation. It makes them realize things. It makes them understand that they're not alone, that their loved ones is on the other side. So sometimes grandpa comes in, sometimes mom comes in, sometimes dad comes in, sometimes it's their guardian angel. But it's always filled with love and so much loving energy.
That sounds like a gorgeous experience. And yeah, in my personal experience, crying and sleeping have been two ways that I have felt healing. So that makes total sense to me. And you mentioned working with angels. This is a good segue into my next question because you also do angel readings. So what happens in an angel reading?
So in an angel reading, we do that in my reading room. And so if it's someone who I don't know, I've never seen, I've never worked with, what I do is again I sense energy, so I automatically tune in into where their energy is at. And usually when they first come in, there's layers and layers of walls built up. It's almost as if they want to have the healing, but they're either afraid or there's something they don't want me to discover, or they're fearful that I'll find something out. So, depending on the state that the person comes in, I always like to start, especially if there are many blockages, with just some nice little aura cleanse. So, I like to take incense and just cleanse the aura. From that point, I like to do a grounding exercise, a short one, but the grounding exercise is really going to help them get anchored to Mother Earth, and also clear up that the blockages in their third eye and the crown by the overthinking and putting the block that they have to hide information or that they're afraid. So I like to do grounding. And then from there, how it goes, the person has a choice if they want me to actually take out my angel oracle deck, or if they want me to just automatically tune in to the other side. Usually people do both. They like both. They like to see the actual cards and they like to see the pictures on the cards. But what's happening is the guidance is automatically coming in. So I will close my eyes. And I like to read with my eyes closed, even though I've done this for so long. My mentors are like, "Why are you still closing your eyes?" I'm like, "I just like it." Um, I tend to close my eyes, but sometimes I don't. It all depends. But yeah, so at that point, I'm receiving guidance, and then the angels and loved ones come in, and then they just come in with what is needed for that person at that moment. So what they need to hear for their healing journey, that's what they're receiving. So it's nothing scary. It's really very loving, very supportive, and helping. It's to help them on their journey here on Earth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And my last question about what you offered, then I really want to talk about your store. I'm so excited to talk about your store. Um, because you also offer Reiki healing as well, I believe, and you also teach it. So if a client like how is what is the best way for a client to decide which modality is the best for the type of healing they need at the moment? How would you talk to a client if they're asking, like, which one should I do if I want to experience a moment of healing with you?
Yeah. So how I would like to describe the chakra balancing we already spoke about, but the Reiki is the energy you're going to feel in a Reiki session is very similar to the energy that you're going to feel in a chakra balancing session. The only difference is that Reiki can either be hands on or hands off. And so what that means is if people don't like touch or there's certain areas they don't like to be touched in, they sometimes would prefer to do the Reiki session. Although I feel that 100% of the clients just automatically go to the chakra balancing, and that's because they want to receive like the messages and all that at the same time. But the Reiki session, I would recommend Reiki for if there's specific ailments in the body or discomfort. I would say Reiki is the way to go, because what that's doing is if there is already pain that's manifesting in the body, that just means that there's a blockage that has already formed within the chakra. And so the body now is trying to get your attention, the person's attention, to saying, hey, you have a blockage, and now it's manifesting into pain. And that's why you have the shoulder pain, the lower back pain, or that's why you get the migraines and the intense headaches. So I would say Reiki, if someone came in and they didn't know what to do, I always say go with what you feel. Read the descriptions that I have on the website and go with what you feel. But I have those clients that want to come in specifically because they're experiencing pain and they really just want to feel that loving energy in that pain point. That would be more Reiki. However, Reiki is not just for pain. Reiki is universal life force energy. So you're still going to feel that love and that protection and that peace that everyone receives after each session. I would just say it's really preference, whether they like hands off, hands on, whether they want the crystals on their body, whether they don't, because each session is definitely catered towards the individual, but the chakra balancing definitely has more components to it. It's such a deeper experience, if you will.
Yeah, I had an ex who he told me he did a Reiki session once. I've never had a Reiki session, it's on my list. And he told me that he knew that the practitioner was not touching his body. However, he felt
Oh yeah.
the contact, so to speak. And that just amazes me. And it sounds like something that everybody could use, really. Everyone could use a Reiki session. Um, so your store, I'm so excited to talk about your store. I can't talk about it enough. So when people walk into your store, your newly open store, it's been almost a month
A
now. Maybe
month.
it's a
It
month
just was a
now.
month yesterday.
Congrats! Yay!
Thank
And so,
you.
what will people find when they enter your store in Long Island? Well, also, I want to say for people that don't know, Long Island City is not in Long Island. I'm going to say it again. We are right across from the United Nations. You can see the Empire State Building very clearly from our neighborhood. It's very close to one stop, subway stop from Manhattan. So when people go to Long Island City, they go to your store, they go up the steps to the second floor. What do they find?
So right away, everyone's first reaction is just how the energy shifted. So everyone always comments on how light and airy the energy feels, and that's because we do have angels here. We do have angels and the archangels here. I set the intentions every morning and every night, that whoever enters the door, that they're just going to be filled with so much love and healing. That it's not just about buying a crystal or booking a service, but it's actually about receiving the healing that they need immediately. And so I truly believe that every single person that enters the door is because they're brought there by their angels. They brought there because the angels already know that I've been placed here to help people. And so they're bringing the people in that need help in some way, shape, or form. It could be help in their spiritual journey. It could be help with actual traumas and fears and pain. It could be help with them feeling confused and wanting to receive more clarity, or they lost someone on the other side and they want that peace. So regardless of what that healing is for that person, the second they come in, that's the energy they're feeling. So right away, aside from how beautiful the shop is, it's really the energy that I tell people to focus on, because that to me is more important than even the crystals. That to me is the energy of you feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling that this is a safe sanctuary. That to me is the ultimate. Um, So when you feel that loving energy, immediately you're just going to see the crystals, and then crystals are just like eye candy. They're just like a candy store for adults, for everyone that comes in. It's just amazing to look at. They're super high vibrational. I hand pick every crystal. I travel the world to get my crystals, and I'm so honored to say that, and blessed, and so thankful for that. But yeah, so each crystal is hand picked by me, because I'm feeling the energy of each crystal, and I'm making sure that the crystal is going to find its home with the person that needs it the most. So when you walk in, you're going to see the crystal shop, and then I have this beautiful space that I've created for the community. I call it my gold room, my gold healing room. Some people call it the yellow room because it's painted yellow. And the reason why it's painted yellow is because that's my guardian angel's favorite color. So I tend to have like bright yellow sneakers when I wear sneakers because I'm like an homage to him. But basically, the this room that I dedicated to the community is anyone that is just feeling stressed or just needs to feel centered, or they want to come in to journal or even read or just take a break from the noise of the world. They can come into this space and just relax. We close the door. There's meditative music on. We have a little crystal waterfall in there, so they hear the sounds of the gentle waterfall going, and yeah, and that space is for them to heal and to just have that moment of quiet. Sometimes people don't have that in their home, so this is a space for people to be able to come in and have that. And so I really pride myself with that space. Also, Archangel Chamuel is there, along with three other angels. So I just wanted to say that. And then, of course, I have spaces in the back, and that door is usually closed because I like to keep the energy really high in the back because that's where the healing sessions and the readings happen. But basically, I have a few rooms in the back. One room is for the healing. So that's the blue room, and that's where the crystals are. That's where I call in the angels for help and guidance. Then I have my office, which is where I'm in now. And then we just have a bathroom and a little kitchenette. So that's like the entire shop. And yeah, and people have access, to these spaces for healing. It all depends on what they need and what they're looking for.
And when I stepped in there a couple times, I definitely feel the high energy, and it's a beautiful, beautiful space. What are some upcoming events you have going on? Which one of them I'm gonna try to go to? I think it's next week, but could you share the
Yeah.
events you have going on?
Oh my gosh, we have so many. So the next event is this upcoming Friday, the next Friday, June 30th, from 6 to 8 p.m. I'm actually going to be hosting a beautiful event with Culture Lab, and at Culture Lab, it's a crystal gridding manifesting workshop, and so it's a 2-hour event where I'm actually going to help teach people how to manifest in a way that's harmonious and loving to them, and techniques and tools that I use myself to help manifest things in my life. And it's important to note that just because we're manifesting doesn't mean that, oop, tomorrow you're gonna have X, Y, and Z. There's work, there's homework that goes into it. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier about the intention setting. So I'm teaching people how to do intention setting. I'm teaching people which geometry or geometric pattern to use to help facilitate the intention that they're trying to achieve, because it's a lot of power and energy behind shape and geometry and symmetry. And so we talk about that. And then, of course, there's going to be a whole bunch of crystals, and each crystal has metaphysical properties to help align the person with their intention or the things that they're trying to attract or work with on this journey on earth, here on their journey. And so I'm going to teach them about the crystals, the right crystals to use for what intention, which grid to use, the geometry of it. We're going to do some exercises. So it's definitely a workshop. So everyone feel free to get down and dirty. There's going to be incense running, just to give you a little idea of what to be expected. But it's all going to be fun and loving and just very informative. I think people are really going to be intrigued by it. It's interesting.
I'm definitely going to try to be there. I'm so excited. So where can our listeners learn more about you and follow you?
Oh my gosh. So right now, I am on Instagram. I'm also working on trying to get my Facebook game going and my TikTok, but it's been so busy with sessions. But you can find me at daisy.earthangelcrystal. You can also find me on my website at earthangelcrystal.com, and my shop. I have this beautiful location that it's not just a crystal shop, it's really truly a healing center. And it's right here in Long Island City on 50th Avenue. The address is 548 50th Avenue, and we're on the second floor. So that's where you guys can find me. And of course, once you come in, you're gonna vibe with me. And if you guys have any questions, you have my text, and people can text me their questions and all that stuff. So it's super fun, super cool.
And if you're visiting, to the listeners, visiting New York City as a tourist and you're from out of town, the shop is one stop away from Grand Central Station. So it's so close to everything. And yeah, I'm just so excited for your shop. I'm excited to have a shop like yours in our neighborhood, and so excited I got to talk with you today.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for, you're more than welcome to come in at any time, like even just to hang out in the spa room, the gold room, and just to get back to center, get back to source. So that's what I say to you. I offer that space for you and for the entire community as well. And thank you so much for having me on this wonderful, wonderful podcast.
Thank you. No, I will definitely use that gold room very soon. I could use the escape. So you'll see me
Yeah,
there soon. Thank
good.
you. Thank you, Daisy.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.